Hi, everybody. This is Sherry Steele, and this is Dick Rohrbaugh you're seeing. He's our presenter tonight, and he's going to take us through some techniques that are really, really interesting. So, Dick, introduce yourself and take it away.
So can you all see that screen?
I can see you.
Yeah. So greetings, everyone. My name is Dick Rohrbaugh. I've tied on this thing before, done it a lot of tying at the shows and various things around the area. Been a friend of Sherry's for a long time. She comes to visit me every summer in Montana, where I live half the year on the Madison River. And so we fished together and tied flies together for a long time, and it's been a lot of fun. So what I want to do tonight is I want to introduce the idea. Most of these programs have been a program on how to tie a particular fly. Those are very valuable. They're interesting, and a lot of times they're new patterns that none of us have seen before. And so that's one of the particular values of this kind of program. It also occurred to me that it might be good once in a while to concentrate on technique. Techniques that can be used in a whole variety of patterns, not just one. I'm hearing an echo. Is somebody?
Yeah, somebody's not muted. So if you guys could mute yourselves unless you want to talk, that'd be great.
Okay, so I decided to try a program on technique. We'll see if it works. I hope that at least some of these techniques will be new to you. Some of them may be old hat. If they are, ask your patience, because I'm sure they're not old hat to everybody. But all of them are techniques that you can use in a variety of flies. So here's what we're going to do for the evening. I want to look at 4 different techniques. One of the things I want to talk about are tying split tails. There are a lot of patterns that use that. There is an old way of doing it that I don't think is very successful. And so I want to introduce another way that I think is simpler and faster. A lot of patterns use PEACOCK HERL. And I want to talk about a way of reinforcing PEACOCK HERL that might be new to some of you. And I'll show it to you in a particular pattern. Then one that I think probably most people have not seen. Twisted bodies, I don't think, done this way, I don't think are very common. I've never seen it in a fly shop. But I want to show you how to do it and how to use it for a midge pattern. Midges have pretty hefty bodies given the size of the bug. And a twisted body makes a good imitation of it. And I'll show you how that's done. And then I'm sure all of you have tied parachute flies. And I'm sure all of you, like me, have been frustrated from time to time in getting the parachute fly tied off in a way that doesn't trap all of the fibers and make a mess that you have to clean up after the tie off. So those are the 4 that I want to look at tonight. And so I want to start with this one on split tails. Whoops. If my program will stay on it, I do.
That looks good.
Can you now see the split tail?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why that thing is jumping, but the split tail that I'm looking at here is on a comparadun. It's tied like a sparkle dun, but a sparkle dun in the back has a shuck on it. The original comparadun had split tails like this. And so that's what I want to concentrate on first. Here's an example. This happens to be a calibrated spinner pattern. I tied this, I think, one of the nights I did this thing for you in Sherry's group. But it has a split tail just like an actual calibrated spinner has. And what I'm interested in is this split. The old way of doing this was right at the back where this arrow is, was to tie on dub on a small ball of fur, then tie the tails on and wrap them back into the ball of fur and try to get them to split. It worked fairly well. It worked some of the time, but it also had the problem that when that ball of fur got wet, the tails also collapsed very easily. So what I'm interested in is a technique that will split the tails, keep them permanently split, and work a little better than a ball of fur at the back of the fly. So if you can all see this now, what I've done here is I've begun to tie the comparadun. I've tied the wing on, and the next step in tying the fly is to tie on the tails. And what I'm going to be using for my split tails are microfivets. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with them. They're very fine filaments, and they make a good tail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the two fibers of the microfivets up and just tie them onto the top of the hook. And you want to make sure that they stay up on the top as you get back here to the tying point. Then the task becomes trying to split those tails. I can clip off the excess here at the front and get it out of my way. But I want to get those split. So what I'm going to use a white piece of thread here, so I think you can see it. I'm going to use a piece of thread to split those. And what I'm going to do is run it up behind the thread and around the back of the hook so that it's sitting right off the back of the hook bend. Bring it up between the tails. And then I want you to watch what happens when I put some pressure on it. You see those tails begin to split? A couple of loose wraps, and now I can split them even farther. So that now I get a set of tails that are nicely split. They're permanently split. They won't fall back together. And I can wrap that off, cut off the thread that I've used, and I can go ahead and dub the rest of the body for the fly. But I find that that's not only permanent, it's quick. If I want to make sure they're exactly the same length, I can clip them off that way. Can you all see those tails?
Oh, yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, it's a very nice way to do that and keep them permanently split, and it works far better and doesn't leave you with a lump at the back of the body when you go to tie the rest of the fly. I didn't really plan to tie the rest of the fly. I just wanted to show you that technique. But obviously what I can now do is dub a body on here. And I don't have to have a ball at the back of the body. Come up here and put a head on it. And I've got a nice comparadun that has a split tail on it. It was made in a very different fashion that's really quite quick. So there would be the finished fly. But the thing I wanted to show you is that way of making tails. So the first thing I want to, or the next thing that I want to do then is ask you if, does anybody have questions about that particular technique?
Do you do it differently with smaller flies? Like
No.
if you're trying to do a 22 or something?
Nope. It works just as well. Works just as well with smaller flies. It works with, if you want to use hackle fibers for the tail, any other tail material you might have, it works just as well.
Is that 6/0 thread that you're using there to split them? Does that give you enough bulk?
I actually used 8/0.
8/0, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. The technique is quite simple, but as you can see in the fly, it's quite effective.
It's not going to close up on you.
No, it's not. I can, here, let me get the one that's on the vise. Hold on. And I can pinch that thing and it just springs right back up. You can't see that, but I can pinch it and it just springs right back apart. So there's technique number one.
Okay.
So now we'll go to technique number two. And what I want to show you here is a way to use peacock HERL. Now, this particular pattern is a renegade. A lot of you will recognize it. It's usually thought of now as a kind of an old-fashioned fly. That's a huge mistake in my view. This fly was first developed in 1920 by a guy named Bear Tracker Williams, who lived in Pinedale, Wyoming, and he developed it for fishing the Green River. But that fly migrated to Montana, and in the late 1940s and 50s, Dan Bailey popularized this for the streams of Montana. It can be fished either wet or dry. It's the second fly that I learned to tie when I was a little kid. And I've used it on every trout water I've ever fished. I still catch fish on it in the Madison River. I catch fish on it in the lakes. So it's a pretty effective one. But what I'm interested in here is that ball of peacock fur that's in the middle. A similar ball of fur is on a Griffith's gnat. A lot of you might know the Griffith's gnat. And the question is how to get it to ball up like that and turn out full and still have it reinforced. Well, the old method for reinforcing it was to it's still used, to counter wrap it with wire or thread over the HERL body. But what I want to show you is a new way to do that, or a different way to do it, that involves spinning peacock HERL into a kind of chenille. I learned this technique from a very old tyer who has now passed on. His name was Cal Bird. He lived along Henry's Fork in Idaho. And Cal was a kind of an innovative tyer, well known in his day. And he developed a special tool for doing this particular technique, but it actually can be done in a variety of ways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a half-tied renegade in my vise, and we'll take the next step, which is tying that ball of peacock in the middle. This is just a size 14 TMCO 100. So I'm just taking a few peacock fibers, just as you normally would. I got to get my thread on this hook. And I'll tie it on as per normally done. Then I want to come right back to where I tied the peacock in, and I'm going to create a dubbing loop. And I'll do it the way you would normally create a dubbing loop and lock it off. So I have a dubbing loop. Now I want you to look at this tool. This is called a cowbird dubbing tool. And what I'm going to do with it, you could also do with an ordinary dubbing twister. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach up inside the loop, grab the fibers with the hook of the tool. I got to make sure I grab all of them. Pull them down and into that dubbing loop. Come down to the end of it. And now I can spin it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spin this into a chenille. And you'll see as it begins to spin, it flares out the barbules on the peacock HERL very nicely. Now, it's not only wrapped firmly into that loop, it's well reinforced by the wrapping process. Now I can wrap that around it as a body, and you can see that it's going to make a nice ball right in the middle of that fly. I can then tie it off. And I have a very well reinforced body that's made a very hefty center for my renegade fly. Can you see it maybe better behind my hand?
Yeah, it looks good.
Now, if I were going to finish this fly, and I don't think I will, but if I were going to finish it, I'd put the white hackle on the front. But the point is, by, you know, a lot of the peacock that you can buy nowadays is pretty crappy stuff. And those fibers that I just used this time, I consider pretty crappy stuff. It's scraggly looking. See if I can show it. It's not very full, but I can get a very full body by creating a chenille out of it in that manner. Now, I know that a lot of you don't have this. I bought this from Cowbird 30 years ago, this tool that he made, but you can do the same thing with a dubbing twister. Something like this. It'll work just as well. And you can spin that thing into a nice little ball of fur, which when you get it onto your fly, will look like that. So there's technique number 2. Any questions about that one? I don't know if anybody has seen that before.
Have you ever tried to reinforce that with a different material using the same thing, i.e. making a dubbing loop out of some, you know, let's say 6X tippet or something, and, you know, experimented with anything to get durability? Or is that a pretty durable? I mean, it's simple because you still have the thread going anyways, so it's pretty efficient.
I haven't really ever tried it with another material, and I don't think you need to. You know, over the last 50 years plus of my fishing that fly, I've never had one come apart, and I've beat the daylights out of them.
That's good enough for me.
When I was a kid, the first 2 flies I learned to tie when I was a kid was a a gray hackle peacock and a renegade, and both of them use this. You can use this technique on the body. Back then, I didn't know anything about entomology and bugs, and I fished the same pattern all day, every day. So this thing really got to work out, and it never has come apart. So I don't think that's really necessary. So now let's go to the third one. If I can get my computer. Something's happening to my computers.
Don't say that.
Yeah, I know. I know what Sherry's thinking. But somehow my cursor is just wildly scrambling all over the screen.
Switch cameras and then come back to it.
Yeah, I'll do this a different way. So now I want to go to the next one. And what I want to talk about is this twisted body. This is a little midge pattern. It's a takeoff on a pattern that Craig Matthews of Blue Ribbon Flies in West Yellowstone calls the Zeeland midge. And the way he ties it, it has just a very thin thread and dubbing body on it. And that works fairly well. But one of the things that's always struck me is that midges have very hefty bodies given the size of the bug. Bug's quite small. The wings on a midge are rather short and stubby. But the body is actually rather hefty. So Craig began to play around with this technique, and I actually learned it from him. I don't think he sells these in his shop, but he and I both tie midges this way now. It's called a twisted midge. And so I want to show you how to make that twisted body. And see if I can get to my...
We're back to seeing you now.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to...
That's good.
There.
So
perfect. I don't know if you can see this very well.
We can see, I can see it.
But it actually has, which is better.
Mm-hmm.
It actually has a twisted body at the back of it. It's just got a Zeeland wing and a little black thorax of dubbing, but it's got this twisted body. And I did this one with a gray Zeeland. I sometimes do it with black. I don't happen to have any black at the moment. But what I want to do is show you how to make that twisted body. You can make that twisted body and put it on flies of any size, all different types of mayfly patterns. You can use it. I often have used it for the bodies on PMDs. I'm actually working here with a size 20 TMCO 100 hook. Because I want to show you that this can be done on a small fly. So I'll just tie on. I'm not going to bother with the Zeeland wing because I'm just trying to illustrate a technique here. This is Zeeland. You often get Zeeland in this kind of a form. You can use this, but these strands are way, way too heavy for this technique. So if this is the kind of Zeeland you use, you want to use only about a half of a strand of it. That's plenty. I have this card here of a Zeeland that's much smaller in diameter. And once I found this, I've gotten so I use it for this technique. So what I want to do is I want this to twist into a very small body that I can put actually on a size 20 fly. So what I'm going to do is take this strand of zealand in my hands and I'm going to start twisting it. And I'll have to grab it with that other finger, give it another twist. I'm going to twist the daylights out of this thing. Now, when I've got it heavily twisted, as I push my fingers together, watch what happens. You see how that twists into a nice little body? So I can take that. I'll even twist the end of it a little more. Now I can put it on my fly and tie it on. There I have a twisted body on the end of my midge fly. That's on a size 20, so I obviously tied it on a little too long. I can tie it shorter. If I tie all the way back, I've got a twisted little body. I tied that off pretty darn short at the back of my fly. You can use that technique for a lot of different kinds of mayfly bodies. It matters how much you twist it. The more twist you get in it, the finer will be the twisted body. So I'm going to twist this one more than I did the last one. You can see I've got that pretty heavily twisted. And look how nicely that comes out. Can you all see that?
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah.
So what part of the fly does that represent then? What is that you can make that? Is it usually a sack or?
Is it what?
What part of the fly are you representing?
I'm actually representing the body. I can tie it forward on the fly, so it's really just not too much longer than the shank of the hook if I wanted to. Mm-hmm. But because I'm tying a little midge pattern here, I let it go off the back so you could see it a little more clearly. But I use that. I'll tie a tail on a let's say a PMD. Then I'll tie this twisted body that hangs partway over the tail and partway off the end of the hook, and then tie the wing and the hackle on it. But I have to say, I use it 90% of the time when I use it for this little midge pattern. Because the midge pattern, the actual body of a midge is longer than the wings. Not a lot of people realize that, but if you catch them and look at them, the body of a midge is actually longer than the wings of the midge. I could actually tie this well forward on the hook. I wasn't trying to let it hang off so you could see it. And then simply put wings in this and I've got a midge pattern. So that's the twisted midge. And the method for twisting a body. So do we have any questions about that one?
Is there anything unique to using the gray Zealand instead of just white?
No, I use the gray Zealand because I happen to have it.
Oh, okay.
But I've used black. I've also used lime green because on Quake Lake, that is near where I live on the Madison River in the summer, there is an absolutely bright Kelly green midge that hatches.
Ah.
And so I've done it in green. I've done it in yellow for, as I said, for PMD emergers. But I did this one in gray because that's what I happen to have here in Montana. I've got all the colors. Was it clear to everybody how that twisting goes?
Yeah, you're doing an excellent job.
Looks good.
Yeah, it really, you can really crank on it. And the more you crank, the tinier the body will be. Okay, that's number 3. So now let me go back to this one. And get my program back together here. And I want to look at parachutes. Well, I suppose most of you tie parachute flies. I tie them by the zillion. This is sort of a parachute Adams. I often use a parachute Adams as a fly to match the Calamatus hatches on Hebgen Lake. I tie a lot of PMD parachutes. I have found the parachute to be an exceedingly effective style of fly. And you all know that there are hundreds of parachute patterns out there. And some of my tying friends hate tying them. And they do because they have such a difficulty tying the fly off and doing the whip finish. The hackle fibers tend to get in the way. So most people, I think, probably, let me get another arrow going. A lot of people try to tie it off right here at the head. That's awkward. Doesn't work very well. It's difficult to do it cleanly and not catch fibers. And so that's one of the methods that is used, but one that gives tyers a lot of frustration. Another possibility for tying off a parachute fly, I'll go back to my arrow here, is to tie it off right here at the bottom of the post. You can actually, in a vise, turn this on its side and do your whip finish right here at the bottom of the post. That's actually a very common technique used by professional tyers. So they don't fiddle around at all with the arrow being at the, whoops, I got my arrow backwards, sorry. They don't much fiddle with it being at the front of the fly. They actually try to whip finish it right at the base of the post. That works. And I'd have to say that I did that for years. The one thing I don't like about it is it's also prone to catching fibers that have to be cleaned up. The second thing I don't like is it kind of makes a bare segment of the post. Where's my? Right in here. Well, my arrow is backwards, but right in here, it often makes it kind of a bare segment of the post that doesn't have hackle fibers on it. And it looks like you tied the hackle on too high up on the post. So I'm not much enamored anymore of that particular technique either. So I learned a different technique from a guy by the name of Dan Delecta. Dan owns the Beartooth Fly Shop near Cameron, Montana on the Madison River. And I got to discussing this one day with Dan, and he showed me this particular technique. And then he pointed out to me that he's a professional tyer. He ties flies by the hundreds. Pointed out to me that he no longer uses a whip finish to tie off any fly that he ties. Every single fly he ties off is tied off with super glue. And he said he began doing that with parachutes just because they were a pain in the neck to try to tie off with a whip finish either done in front of the, on the post or at the front of the fly. And so he gave up on that and he developed this technique of doing it with super glue. And it works so well that he no longer whip finishes any fly that he ties. Every fly he ties of whatever pattern is now finished with super glue. So I thought I'd show you how he does it and how I now tie off all my parachute flies. So what I've done here is I tied on a shuck on the back. I've dubbed a body on the fly, and note that I dubbed the front in front of the wing post is already done. Is that clear? I've got the post and I've tied the feather already on the post because I wanted to, I don't want to have to tie the whole fly just to show you this technique. So I've done the usual thing of tying a feather up the post so that I can now start my wrapping up near the top of the tie off. And I'm going to wrap down the post down to the, and I'll wrap 3 or 4 wraps of the thing. Now, I usually do this on the side nearest to me. And so I'm used to doing that, but I don't know if I thought about trying to tie it off on the side that you're looking at, but I don't think I can do it for right now, but I can show you the glue technique. So now I'm going to tie this off. And the way I do it is 2 wraps around the post, holding the feather straight down. Then 2 more wraps around the post, holding the feather straight up. Now that feather is locked off on the post and I can cut it off. And you can now see that my thread is hanging straight down. Now, what I do at this point is I tilt the fly up toward myself so that I can pull the thread out here. And I don't know, wonder if I could do that on the far side and show you the. So I've got the thread out from the fly and down below it. Actually, I'm going to do it on my side, but then I'm going to take a little bottle of super glue. This is just ordinary old CA glue. This happens to be the Zap-A-Gap variety. And what you need is a variety that has the little brush on the end. And all you have to do is just one swipe of the brush across that thread. That's it. Wrap that around so that the glue contacts the post. Cut it off and your fly is finished. No whip finish necessary, no half hitches, no fiddling with having to cut off hairs that got out of whack. I now do all of my parachute flies this way, and I've never had one come undone. Dan would tell you that he ties every single fly he ties. He ties it off with just that little one swipe of a super glue brush on the thread. They never come undone, no whip finish involved. I haven't quite graduated to that, but I have used his technique for parachute flies because it's so simple. So, another technique. Any questions about that one?
It's got the wow factor.
It's astonishing how easy it is.
Yeah, if anybody's looking for a full YouTube video to recreate the beauty that he just did, Cheech from Fly Fish Food ties a purple haze same way. So that's just something to memorialize the art you just created.
Well, this will be posted on our YouTube channel.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so if you sign up for our Central Oregon Fly Tyers Guild YouTube channel, which is on your handout, I'll post this. Hopefully I'll have it done by Monday.
Okay. And that's
And,
the Sherry Steele
yes.
YouTube channel? Okay, yeah, I'm already subscribed.
You're already a subscriber. So I've been good at trying to get it done by Monday.
Okay. I thought I could also show you to do the how I do this by doing it on a hook that has no feathers on it to get in the way. So you can actually see me do it. So you can imagine the fly has been tied, not a parachute perhaps, but just a regular fly. And I'm at the front of the fly. I've wrapped off a little bit of the head. And I want to do this because I want to show you how little super glue it actually takes to do this. One swipe like that, actually a drop fell off of, but I don't know, can you see there's one tiny little bead?
Yeah.
Tiny, tiny little bead of super glue right there. Wrap that onto the hook and that thing's done. No whip finish involved. And I guarantee you that will stay together.
Dick, this is John. The other tip that I would provide is I too use that brushable Zap-A-Gap super glue, and be very careful when you put that back in the bottle so you don't get any super glue on the top, because it'll super glue the brush to that. How do I know that? I've thrown several bottles away.
Yes, I have done the same. I've done the same. But these little tiny bottles, that's one of the reasons, John, that I buy these small bottles of Zap-A-Gap, because if I end up having to throw away, it's not throwing away a bigger bottle of super glue. These tiny little bottles work quite well, but you know, once again, it's just one little swipe. That actually put a pretty big, much more on there than you need. You don't need that big. There's just a tiny few beads on that thread right there of the super glue. And that's all it takes to wrap that, and it is not coming off. So the next time you tie a parachute fly, try it. You want to try it on a bare hook first. That's not a bad way to get a feel for how it actually functions. But
this is John Smith. I get a new bottle of super glue. The first thing I do is pull that brush out and take about 2/3 of the bristles and trim them out of the head.
Yeah.
That eliminates applying too much to your thread, and also cuts down John's problem about getting it back into the
yeah, it's a good idea.
bus.
I think I said this a minute ago, but let me reiterate. When I'm doing it on an actual parachute fly, I usually turn the vise up like this so that the fly is vertical. And then when I do it, any super glue that's on it's going to run down the thread, not toward me, if too much gets on it. So it's a lot easier to do it when you're doing it vertically.
All right.
So those are my 4 techniques, folks.
Any more
anybody
questions?
wants to see one again, or anybody has any questions about them, give me a holler.
Yeah, could you do the first one again?
The 4th one?
The first one.
First
about
one.
the split tails?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, I can. I'll do it on a bare hook, so there's no doubt that you can see what I'm doing. There will be nothing in the way. So let me just get some thread on here. So what I'm going to do again is take a pair of these. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong camera, folks. I'll take a pair of these microfibets, okay? and tie them on. And it's fairly important that you tie them right on top of the hook. If you get them on the side, this whole thing will be haywire. So tie it back to the tie-off point at the back of the hook. And then I just need a piece of thread, any old piece of tying thread. I happen to have a piece here that's red so that I think you can see it. And what I'm going to do is just come up here behind the thread and get this into the back of the hook, right below the tail. Can you see that?
Yes.
Then bring it up between the two microfibers. And as I pull it over and pull forward, that thing splits. I'm tugging on it fairly hard. Put a couple of wraps on it. And look how it stayed.
Yeah.
That's a lot easier.
It's a heck of a lot better. It won't collapse. I'm going to do it again here. So I've got that thread on the back, right on the bend of the hook, right behind. I'll bring it up between the two tails. And as you bring it up, they split like that.
Well, does it matter what size thread you use to do that?
I don't think so, Sherry. I've never tried it with anything but 8/0.
Okay.
But the technique works beautifully, and I have tried it. I used to make some flies that had a tail out of split deer hair, piece of deer hair. That's a bad idea. They're too soft. I've done it with moose hair. That's a little bit better. It works with that. I've done it with spade hackle fibers that were used on a lot of traditional mayflies for split tails, but it splits them widely, easily, and permanently. And you can see that. Well, you can see that if I pinch those, they spring right back apart.
Yeah, thank you, Dick. Appreciate it.
Yeah, now I usually then chop this off to a more.
Sherry, this is Dutch. I
Yes,
use that
Dutch.
technique down to 12 or 14/0. And it works
okay.
just fine. And it also is a great technique that Dick's showing that works for a 3-tail fly.
Yeah, it does.
So how do you do 3 tails when you've got 1 thread?
You split
Exactly the same way Dick showed it. You put the thread around the bend of the hook, and as you bring it straight up, both pieces of the thread go along each side of the middle tail.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
So the
Oh,
middle
because
tail,
there's 2 pieces of thread.
Right.
the middle tail
Oh.
just remains straight out, and the 2 outside pieces of the tail split just the way I just did it.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah,
other
you can
thing-
do it with 3.
That's
Now,
really
this is Al. The other thing you can do too, before you cut those tag ends off, if one tail is cocked a little bit more than the other, you can pull on the different strands to adjust the spread of your tail.
That is true,
Ah,
but it's a pretty slick
that is a great technique.
little way to do that.
Well, you guys will be happy to know that Dick is going to have a presentation for us on February 24th also. That is a pretty interesting fly, the Twisted Sister. So make sure you tune in on that. And I guess
I
the
might
history.
just say a word about that
Yeah,
pattern.
could you?
It's a pattern developed again by Dan Delecta. It's a spruce moth pattern. It looks marginally like a spruce moth, but it works. It's fabulous. It catches fish on during a spruce fly hatch big time. There's no difficulty in any of the techniques of tying it, but it's a very complex fly. It has 10 or 12 steps. And so there's a lot involved in tying one. Many of the techniques that are involved in that can be used for other flies too, but I thought you might enjoy seeing it because it's a fly not many people know, and it has the best name of any fly I ever imagined.
Twisted Sister.
The Twisted Sister.
There's something to that. I might have one of those.
So
anyway, so let me remove your spotlight, I think. Put me back. I can't find where I do that now.
You're back.
Oh, am I back? I just can't tell that I'm back. Anyway, what I'd like to do is have John Kreft. John, if you're still here somewhere, if you could talk about next week's, the fly you're going to tie for next week.
I will. I'm going to demonstrate a couple of flies using CDC fibers. And one of them is the Iobo Humpy, and the other is CDC loopwing emerger. So I'll talk about the different types of CDC feathers that I found effective.
Okay. So that's next Thursday, same time, same station. And we had 34 people here at one time. So I thank you all for being here, and keep telling your friends about it. And these classes are free to anybody that has the link. And our club is planning on continuing to do this through the last one in April. And then when we start, we'll reevaluate our club membership at that time, because so far we haven't been charging for any membership fees during the COVID time. And we'll continue to do that. And we encourage you to sign up to be a member of our club, and just send me an email if you're interested in doing that. So if anybody doesn't have any more questions,
Thanks, Dick.
Thank you, Dick, for a great presentation.
Awesome presentation, Dick. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dick. It was really great.
And the camera work was superb.
Yeah, Dick.